I'm Mandee Lee, the host of Try This. Try This is an educational show that is all about cannabis and cannabis products to help you get the most value from our favorite plant. And this week we are talking about juicing cannabis and the 5 things that you definitely want to know about getting started. So let's dive in and let's try this. You might have heard about juicing as it's been gaining more and more popularity and attention over the past several years. Now, for me, myself, I started juicing several years ago. It was just a great way of getting more nutrients into my body quickly. It works as a natural cleanse and it keeps me super healthy and helps me to keep my weight down as well. But it was only last year that I learned that cannabis can be juiced as well. Now, if you're not familiar with the benefits of juicing, what you're basically doing is you're concentrating all of the nutrients of the plant into a condensed liquid that's full of more beneficial nutrients than you would be able to eat in one sitting. Now, the juicer machine that you use, it basically starts the digestion process for you. It breaks down the food and removes the fiber so that your body can process the nutrients more quickly and easily. Now, there's a gentleman by the name of Dr. William Courtney who specializes in the dietary uses of cannabis. And he's been studying juicing with cannabis in its raw form for several years. He's worked with over 7,000 patients. And it's pretty interesting because what he says is that cannabis is actually the most important vegetable on our planet because of its ability to boost your immune system and act as an anti-inflammatory and improve bone metabolism and even boost neural function. You know, it's loaded with all of these antioxidants, it's a complete protein, and it provides the perfect balance of omega-3s and 6s. So he actually feels that in its raw form, it should be treated as a dietary essential supplement because it actually helps all 210 types of cells function more effectively. And what's interesting is that it can also help prevent diseases that cannabis is actually used to treat when you're juicing it. So here are the 5 things that you need to know about juicing cannabis. Number 1 is the cannabinoid difference in juicing. So when you're juicing cannabis, you don't experience any of the psychoactive high effects. And the reason for this is that cannabis in its raw form, it doesn't have the psychoactive cannabinoid THC in it. Instead, it has the acid form, which is THCA. And it's only when you add THCA to heat that you get the cannabinoid THC. So because of this, you are able to consume much larger doses of this nutrient-rich plant, which helps you get more of the healthy benefits of the cannabinoids into your system without any psychoactive activity and effects. Plus, if your plant has high doses of CBD in its genetics, then you'll also have high percentages of CBDA in the raw plant, which is the acid form of CBD before it's heated. Number 2 is harvesting. So when you are juicing cannabis, you always want to use freshly harvested leaves and flower or trim. Now, from the time that you're harvesting, it's important to know that the plant material, it's going to start breaking down and losing some of its beneficial enzymes. In fact, what I've found is that after I pick just a couple cannabis leaves, within like 15 minutes, I start to see them wither up and wilt. So for this reason, you'll want to harvest your plant and then immediately go and juice it. Now, you'll want to juice the leaves and the flower or the buds, but not the stem because the stem is actually quite fibrous and it can clog up your juicer if you try to juice it. Now, the best time to harvest your plant is when the plants are actually flowering, and some people feel that the 3rd week of flowering is the most ideal time. And as you're picking your leaves, you'll want to make sure that you pick the ones that are on the inside of the plant because the ones on the outside are catching all the sunlight and they're helping your plant to grow and be strong. Now, when selecting your buds for juicing, you'll want to pick the ones where the THC glands are actually clear as opposed to amber. And as a rule of thumb, Dr. Courtney recommends, whenever possible, to take a cannabis juicing amount of 15 leaves and 2 large buds or flowers per day. And the size of a large bud would be somewhere between 2 and 4 inches in length. But just know that if you don't have bud to juice, leaves will work just as well. Now, number 3 is the device and technique. So you will want to use a wheatgrass juicer. These type of machines are basically, they're better for juicing more fibrous material so that your juicer doesn't get all clogged up. And it's good to know that the slower the juicer, the more efficient it tends to be because it's getting every ounce of nutrients out of your plant versus quickly passing the plant through and then missing out on some of the material that can still be juiced. Also, when the juicer moves super fast, it adds oxygen to the juice, which immediately will start to degrade a little bit of the quality of the juice. And it's also going to make your juice just a little bit foamier. I also recommend getting an electric juicer and not a hand crank machine because it takes a lot of cannabis leaves to make a small amount of juice and your arm will get tired. So here are 2 additional tips that I have for you in regards to the technique. So if you take your pulp that comes out of the machine that you've already juiced and you put it back through the juicer, you will actually get a little bit more juice out of it. And since it takes so much cannabis to create a small amount of juice, every little bit helps and you'll definitely want to do this. And then my second tip for you is if you actually soak the cannabis leaves in some cold bowl of cold water for about 5 minutes before juicing, it's going to open up the pores of the plant and make it easier to juice as well. But you don't want to soak the buds so that you can preserve all the trichomes on the buds, just soak the leaves. Now, number 4 is consuming and storing. So as I hinted at earlier, it takes a lot of cannabis to make a small amount of juice, so you'll most likely be ending up with about a shot glass full. Now, personally, when I consume it, I love it. It tastes fresh, vibrant, it feels full of energy. I don't really mind the taste at all. It kind of reminds me of taking a wheatgrass shot. And if you haven't had a wheatgrass shot, it kind of tastes like freshly mowed grass that has a sweet and spicy finish to it. But that taste is not necessarily for everyone, so we do have some additional options for you. Number 1 is you can add some water or coconut water to dilute it a little bit. And number 2 is you can mix in some other type of veggie juice like cucumber or carrot to blend out the flavor. And when doing this, the juice is going to be most beneficial and definitely tastes better when it's consumed immediately. But some people will say that it can be stored in a fridge in a sealed container for about 3 days. However, what we have found is that when cannabinoids are left in a watery solution like tea or juice, they precipitate out of the solution and stick to the sides of the container over a short period of time. So that brings us to what I think is the best option, which is option number 3. And this is also my storaging tip for you guys, because most people are not going to be able to harvest and then juice on a daily basis. And there are also times of the year when your plant's just not ready to be harvested. So I found that the best thing to do is to make your cannabis juice and then to turn it into ice cubes, because then you can store them in your freezer. And there are different opinions on how long they last in the freezer. Some people will say 1 month, some people say up to 6 months, but either way, it's going to greatly extend the life of your cannabis juice. And then you can just add a couple of those ice cubes into your smoothie when you're looking for your daily dose of cannabis juice. Now, when I do this, I don't taste the flavor almost at all of the cannabis in the smoothie. And the cool thing is that the cannabinoids and terpenes, they're fat soluble. So when you mix them with something like fatty, that's like a yogurt or coffee creamer or coconut oil, it reduces the risk of cannabinoids sticking to the sides of the container that we were talking about earlier. And it also helps with GI tract absorption. Now the last one, number 5, is supply. So most dispensaries are not going to be able to offer cannabis trim to patients as of now. So the best thing to do if you're interested in juicing cannabis is to try to talk with a local grower if you know one, and ask if you can use their trim when they're done. Now, many of the growers are mostly concerned with the flowers or the bud and not so much the trim. That actually ends up getting wasted for a lot of growers. So there is a great chance that they might be willing to let you have the trim and use it for juicing. Now, if you go this route, you just want to make sure that the cannabis trim that you are getting is organic and doesn't have any sort of pesticides that are in it. Otherwise, your next best option is if you live in a state where it's legal to grow cannabis for patients with a recommendation, then growing your own is always going to be the best bet because it gives you the most access and the most freedom to pick and harvest whenever you need to. Now, it's important to note that the effects of juicing cannabis, they're not necessarily instantaneous, like, for example, when you are ingesting heated cannabis. So I would tend to think of it more like taking a supplement. For some people, it can take up to a few weeks before your body starts to feel a shift from the juicing. And if this is something that you might want to try and you currently have a serious medical condition or you're taking prescription drugs, then I encourage you to talk with a medical provider first about using raw cannabis juice to help treat your specific symptoms before you start the whole juicing process, because there are certain people who might not be the best candidates for juicing with cannabis, such as people with kidney or gallbladder issues, or people who have hypercalciuria, or anyone that is on blood thinner medications as well. And as always, for any of your cannabis educational needs, you can head on over to learngreenflower.com, where you can learn all about cannabis from the world's leading experts. Thank you so much for watching, guys.